Greetings, true believers, and welcome to another new episode of History of the Marvel Universe. This show is sponsored in part by Patreon supporters. If you would like to contribute and vote in monthly polls, you can head over to patreon.com/MerryMarvelite and sign up for as little as $1 per month. For this week's story, we begin in ancient times in the Southeast Asian nation today known as Cambodia. There existed a dimensional breach known as the Well of All Things, from which vast mystical energy could potentially be drawn. Seeking to find a way to harness this energy, one group spent decades building a structure around this breach, the Temple of the Dragon's Breath. This group eventually developed into a cult that believed that selective breeding was the key to controlling the Well of All Things. At one point, a prophecy was written that their women would mate with Westerners to produce uniquely powerful children, and that these powerful youths would then be cast into the well. For the next piece of our tale, we jump to 20th century New York City, with a wealthy African-American couple named the Taylors and their son, Daryl. Living in a time of racial tension, the Taylors feared their civil rights activism would make them a target of violent bigotry. And so, to ensure the security of their family's future, they invested their money into diversified holdings and charities as the Taylor Foundation. Meanwhile, their son Daryl grew up and married a woman named Melody Ann. And as an adult, he joined the United States military alongside his close friend Andrew Cord. The two served a tour of duty in Southeast Asia as part of a combat unit known as the Half-Fulls. Also in this unit was a man named Diego Cassius, who will also factor into this story. During this time, they came upon the hidden Temple of the Dragon's Breath and the cult that resided there. The cult's leader, a woman named Tai, threatened the soldiers with her mystical powers. She demanded they marry their chosen women, known as the Daughters of the Dragon, and fulfill the ancient prophecy. In truth, Tai had already killed the others of her own generation and plotted to use the potential superhuman children to control the Well of All Things herself. Daryl Taylor, having a wife waiting for him back home, refused, but the other men agreed. Andrew Cord married Tai's daughter, Miami, and fathered twin children. However, Miami didn't want her babies to be exploited by her mother and faked their deaths as well as her own. She left the twins with a surrogate mother in Chinatown and fled to San Francisco. Thinking his family was dead, Andrew turned to mercenary work, but seeking purpose, eventually went back to Tai. Tai then accompanied him back to the United States, concocting another plot. Meanwhile, Diego Cassius, another member of the Half-Fulls, also married one of the Daughters of the Dragon. Moving to the US as well, the two lived happily together and produced a healthy baby girl. However, tragedy struck several years later when Diego's wife and child were victims of an elevator accident. While his wife perished in the fall, his daughter was left comatose. As for Daryl, he returned home after his tour of duty ended and eventually inherited control of the Taylor Foundation. He reunited with Aaron Cord, and the two men worked together to expand the foundation into an even larger conglomerate of charitable enterprises and eventually a multi-billion-dollar business. However, while Daryl Taylor was a good man, he wasn't infallible. During a business trip to Chicago, Daryl had a drunken affair with an unidentified mistress. The woman became pregnant but was paid a hefty sum of money to stay silent about the whole affair. Daryl returned to his wife Melody, who later bore his second child, Dwayne Michael Taylor, with Cord as the boy's godfather. The Taylors soon became the family that Cord longed for, and he was like a second father to young Dwayne. And so when Tai ordered him to kill Daryl and Melody Taylor, Cord refused. Unfortunately, days later, while the family was having dinner together, Tai used her magic to seize control of Cord's body. Fully aware but unable to control his actions, he gunned down his closest friends in front of their young son. Dwayne was traumatized, but the details of the murder were obscured by Ty's magic, forcing him to forget the killer's identity. With the murder of Daryl and Melody Taylor unsolved, control of the Taylor Foundation and guardianship of Dwayne fell to Andrew Cord. Posing as a simple housekeeper, Ty partnered with Cord to raise Dwayne and run the Taylor Foundation. While all that was happening, Diego Cassius spent over 10 years traveling the world and searching arcane tomes for some way to resurrect his family. While he was unsuccessful, he did learn that his daughter was a mutant whose comatose body contained the extra-dimensional energy known as Dark Force, and used the mystic arts to siphon that energy into himself. Meanwhile in Chicago, Dwayne's half-brother Danielle Taylor grew up knowing very little about his father. However, as a teenager, Danielle discovered that he was a mutant with the power to generate electricity. While in New York, Dwayne was mentored and rigorously trained by Cord and Ty. Andrew Cord passed on his combat skills and instilled a sense of morality in Dwayne Taylor. Spurred on by the vague memory of his parents' murder, a teenage Dwayne began operating as a vigilante at night, taking to the streets to search for crime. When he was old enough, he inherited controlling ownership of the Taylor Foundation, but left the day-to-day business to Cord and Ty, preferring to focus on his vigilantism. Meanwhile, the lost children of Andrew and Miami Cord grew up unaware of their parentage. Developing superhuman abilities of their own, they became known as Midnight's Fire and Silhouette. Midnight Fire's body was at peak human levels of fitness, and he could emerge unscathed from things that would kill most normal people, while Silhouette had a connection to the Dark Force dimension that allowed her to phase into shadows and use them to teleport. The twins joined a street gang called the Concrete Dragons, but became vigilantes themselves after most of the other dragons were killed by a rival gang, the Poison Memories. The twins eventually crossed paths with Dwayne Taylor, none suspecting the connection between their families. Not wishing to give his real name and inspired by Midnight Fire's colorful moniker, Dwayne introduced himself as Night Thrasher. Working together, Night Thrasher and the twins took down several criminal gangs, including the Steel Waves, which was run by a pyrokinetic drug dealer known as Scorch. Dwayne began to grow close with Silhouette and revealed his real name to her. Before long, a full-on romance blossomed between them, but it wasn't meant to last. One day, the three were working on a sting operation to expose another gang. Silhouette was making an exchange while Midnight's Fire and Night Thrasher watched from a nearby fire escape, ready to jump in. However, the exchange was interrupted by a lone police officer who pulled his gun, and what happened next happened in the span of 18 seconds. Midnight's Fire prepared to throw a bladed weapon and kill the cop, but Night Thrasher stopped him. An armed gang member took cover behind Silhouette and fired at the officer. The cop was hit but fired back, hitting Silhouette in the leg and the gang member in the chest. Finally, the gang member stumbled backwards, his wild shots hitting Silhouette in the spine. In a rage, Midnight's Fire turned his blade on Night Thrasher, leaving a vertical scar on the right side of his face. When the violence ended and the scene fell silent, Fire rushed to his sister's side. Silhouette survived her injuries but permanently lost the full use of her legs, and Midnight's Fire swore revenge on Night Thrasher. After that, Dwayne developed a high-tech armored battlesuit to help with his vigilantism. He designed it alongside Andrew Cord, who secretly based the appearance of the suit on the warriors who stood guard at the Temple of the Dragon's Breath. The first time Dwayne wore it was the night after Silhouette was shot. He tracked down the partner of the man who pulled the trigger and delivered him to the police with a sign around his neck that read, "Thrashed by the Night." Dwayne also saw the value in working with others and, at Cord's suggestion, decided to recruit a team. Tai encouraged this, secretly hoping that whoever he assembled could be used as replacement sacrifices to the Well of All Things. Night Thrasher's first recruit was Richard Ryder, formerly the teenage hero Nova. He had been depowered, but acting on a hunch, Dwayne dropped Ryder from the top of a building. The adrenaline rush from the fall caused his latent abilities to reactivate, and Richard Ryder once more became Nova, the human rocket. Next was the telekinetic hero Vance Astrovic, then called Marvel Boy, but today is better known as Justice. Those three then recruited Angelica Jones, a mutant known as Firestar who had gone into hiding after Emma Frost had tried and failed to groom her into a ruthless killer. This new team met their first real battle when the stone-bending alien known as Terrax was resurrected. Already on the scene was Namorita, the cloned daughter of the Atlantean hero of the 1950s, Namora. The young heroes battled Terrax and were soon joined by another. The last to arrive was Robbie Baldwin, better known as Speedball, who generated an energy field that allowed him to redirect kinetic energy. Together, the six defeated Terrax and remained together, naming their group the New Warriors. Operating out of Night Thrasher's penthouse, the New Warriors were funded by the Taylor Foundation and mentored by Andrew Cord. They soon made their public debut as a team by aiding Thor in battle against the villainous Juggernaut. Meanwhile, Midnight's Fire began rebuilding his old gang, the Concrete Dragons, providing them with high-tech weaponry built by advanced idea mechanics. To conceal this, he murdered several police officers, leaving Night Thrasher's calling card behind. This, of course, led to another confrontation between Night Thrasher and Midnight's Fire, while the other New Warriors battled the heavily armed Concrete Dragons. Despite Midnight Fire's considerable strength, Night Thrasher was able to gain the upper hand, wrapping a garrote wire around his neck. However, Silhouette then arrived to stop Dwayne from killing her brother. Night Thrasher spared Midnight's Fire, but left him with a facial scar mirroring his own. At the same time, Silhouette disowned her brother for his murderous turn, leaving him to the police. She later joined the New Warriors as well, with her enhanced strength and Dark Force powers more than compensating for her disability. Dwayne rekindled his romance with Silhouette, but soon found evidence of corruption within the Taylor Foundation. Enraged, Night Thrasher violently confronted Andrew Cord, who denied any involvement. Cord subsequently convinced the other New Warriors that Dwayne and Silhouette must have been compromised somehow. However, the two soon uncovered proof that Cord was complicit in the Taylor Foundation's illegal dealings. Ashamed of himself and terrified of the real mastermind, Tai, Cord turned his gun on himself and attempted to end his own life. The New Warriors rushed him to a hospital where he remained unconscious but alive. Meanwhile, Midnight's Fire was broken out of prison by the Dark Force-empowered Diego Cassius, now calling himself the Left Hand. Together, they tracked down other children of the pact between the Half-Fulls and the Daughters of the Dragon to form the group known as the Folding Circle. Other members included Eric Conroy, otherwise known as Bloodstrike, Min Lee Ng, aka Silk Fever, and Conrad Mack, the Smiling Tiger. While that was happening, Night Thrasher left his own teammates over a moral argument. Soon, the Folding Circle tracked him down and Dwayne Taylor reluctantly joined their ranks. Meanwhile, Tai finally found her long-lost daughter, Miami, and interrogated her about her children. After learning that the twins had been abandoned in Chinatown years ago, Tai viciously slaughtered her own daughter. Figuring out the identities of her grandchildren, Tai confronted Silhouette and revealed to her the identity of her parents, as well as the familial connection between them. The old woman attempted to kill her as well, but Silhouette was able to escape using her Dark Force abilities. Tai then used her mystic powers to awaken Andrew Cord from his coma and told him about his family. She then ordered him to tell the new warriors where to find her before returning to Cambodia. The Folding Circle headed there as well as Diego Cassius, the left hand, plotted to claim the well's power for himself. They arrived at the Temple of the Dragon's Breath, where Knight Thrasher encountered the guards on whom his armor was modeled. Finding Ty there, Knight Thrasher and Midnight's Fire finally learned the full truth about their fathers. Things soon came to a head when the new warriors arrived along with new recruits Rage and Darkhawk. Ty planned on sacrificing the young heroes in an attempt to gain full control of the Well of All Things, but the two groups joined forces to oppose her. In the end, Ty attempted to throw Knight Thrasher and Diego into the well. However, Dwayne delivered the killing blow, avenging his parents once and for all. Diego Cassius fell into the well along with Ty's body, causing the dimensional rift to close in on itself, taking the temple with it. Midnight's Fire and the other surviving members of the Folding Circle escaped and took up residence on the island nation of Madripoor, where they became allies with the low-town crime boss Tiger. After returning to the United States, Knight Thrasher embarked on a quest to root out further corruption in the Taylor Foundation, spurred on by Andrew Cord's apparent kidnapping. In truth, Cord had arranged for his own abduction to force Dwayne into action after the two had stopped talking, so the Foundation could be reformed. Knight Thrasher's investigation put him into conflict with the Poison Memories, the gang that destroyed the first incarnation of the Concrete Dragons. After Dwayne started the restructuring of the Taylor Foundation, Cord revealed his motivations for the deception, and the two men began their reconciliation. However, the Poison Memories struck back at Knight Thrasher by attacking the families of the new warriors. In these attacks, the grandmother and legal guardian of their youngest member, Rage, was killed. Striking back, the new warriors crushed the Poison Memories, and Rage murdered their leader himself. With Rage still legally a minor, Andrew Cord and Dwayne Taylor arranged to become his legal guardians for the time being. Meanwhile, between Dwayne's guilt over Silhouette's spinal injury and the relationship always taking a back seat to his crime fighting, the couple drifted apart. The final straw came when he found out that she'd maintained ties with the Concrete Dragons in her brother's absence. The two remained allies and teammates, but could no longer be lovers. Meanwhile, Danielle Taylor had learned of his half-brother's privileged life and grown resentful of Dwayne. Calling himself Bandit, Danielle traveled to New York and started making advances towards Silhouette. Confronting Knight Thrasher, Bandit was armed with a small metal spear attached to a conductive wire. This allowed him to send electric shocks through it with his mutant power. Dwayne was badly beaten during their first fight, but managed to survive. Becoming more unstable, Bandit then held Silhouette captive to lure Knight Thrasher out for a final confrontation. This time, armored and ready, Knight Thrasher was victorious over his half-brother. However, Silhouette found herself drawn to Bandit, and the two started a romance sometime thereafter. He also proved his capacity for heroism when he assembled a substitute team of new warriors to battle the immortal villain the Sphinx and rescue the others. After that, Silhouette decided to leave the team with Danielle. Meanwhile, Dwayne was angry about their continued relationship, driving a further wedge between them. Still holding a grudge against his brother, Danielle began stealing secrets from the Taylor Foundation and selling them to rival companies. Because of these efforts, he discovered that Dwayne was doing business with Scorch, a former drug dealer who Knight Thrasher battled in his early days alongside Silhouette and Midnight's Fire. Silhouette and Bandit confronted Knight Thrasher, interrupting a meeting between him and Scorch. Bandit cared little about Scorch, but relished the opportunity to attack his brother. However, it seems Dwayne was trying to be pragmatic, as Scorch likely wouldn't be prosecuted for his crimes, but he could do more good as a reformed businessman. In fact, after this, Knight Thrasher started using the Taylor Foundation to stop criminal enterprises by either buying them out or forcing them out of business. However, his attitude alienated the other new warriors, making them feel like he only saw them as tools in his war on crime, and Knight Thrasher left the team. Rage was the only one who stood by his side during this time and left along with him. For a brief time, Knight Thrasher mentored another team of superhumans known as Psionics, but he and Rage eventually reconciled with the new warriors, and over the following years, Knight Thrasher spent time both on and off the team. During one of the new warriors' times of inactivity, he traveled to Japan, where he spent several months improving his fighting skills. However, this ended when his sensei, Masahiko, was killed by assassins from the ninja cult known as the Hand. Meanwhile, Danielle's relationship with Silhouette ended after he romanced the leader of the New Orleans Thieves Guild, Belladonna Boudreaux. After that, Danielle began to question his life choices to that point and began studying engineering and technology, proving to be a quick learner. However, he was also one of many mutants to lose their powers during the incident known as M-Day. Meanwhile, a scientist working for the Taylor Foundation named Zachary Smith was working on a cure for cancer utilizing a flesh-eating bacteria. Smith seemed to successfully develop a culture that only attacked cancer cells, unaware that this was only because his son Zachary Jr. had subconsciously controlled the bacteria with his mutant powers. Unable to reproduce the results, Smith's cure was seemingly deadly outside of those specific conditions. Zachary Smith was ruined, and his repeated attempts at perfecting the bacteria eventually ended in his demise when he tested it on himself. Due to subsequent legal battles surrounding this debacle, Dwayne Taylor lost control of the Taylor Foundation and his family fortune. He subsequently made a deal with a television producer named Ashley Brothers, who turned the New Warriors into a reality TV series. Knight Thrasher starred in this series, roaming small-town America fighting crime, with Zach Smith Jr. joining as Microbe. However, this turned tragic when the Warriors attacked a group of villains in Stamford, Connecticut. One of the villains, a man called Nitro, caused an explosion that killed hundreds of civilians, many of which were children. Namorita and Microbe lost their lives in the blast, and Speedball was emotionally scarred. However, Knight Thrasher was pulled from the explosion by the Elder of the Universe known as the Collector, and used in a contest of champions against his brother the Grandmaster. Meanwhile, Danielle Taylor had made a small fortune with his patents and set up a company called Taylordyne Technologies. With his brother legally declared dead, Danielle inherited the multimedia rights to the New Warriors and began rebuilding the Taylor Foundation, using it to help the families of the Stamford incident's victims. At the same time, it was the Stamford incident which fast-tracked the proposed Superhuman Registration Act that led to the superhero Civil War. After the war ended and the SHRA was made law, Danielle Taylor became the new Knight Thrasher and led his own team of new warriors. And if you want to know what happens next, you can see Danielle's team in the 2007 New Warrior series, and after that he appears in the second half of Avengers: The Initiative. As for Dwayne, you can see him in the 2015 Contest of Champions series, and later in the Punisher story, War on the Streets. And if you want to see more of Midnight's Fire and Silhouette, you can see both of them more recently in the 2019 series, Ironheart. That's all I've got for you today, but thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, share the video, and subscribe for more Marvelous content. Be sure to leave a comment letting me know what Marvel hero or villain you want to hear about next, and as always, the issues referenced in this video are listed in the description below if you would like to read them for yourself, as well as links to other places you can find me, including my Patreon page, where for only $1 a month you can get your name in these special thanks here. So until next time, true believers, Excelsior!